Welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast for the UK.
Hello. How are we doing? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first podcast of 2026. Hugh, before you disappear off, I believe that Facebook has not connected. So if you want to work your magic in the background and do your thing, while I just say, hey, Sean, how are you doing?
I'm good. I've got a tick in the... Oh, no, I haven't. Yeah, that's right. Facebook's not... Yeah. Not doing too bad at all. What about you?
I'm doing very well. We seem to have it all going on tonight. We've managed to bring Gary in 10 minutes early, but that's absolutely fine. Hey, Gary, how you doing?
Hello.
You can join us just for a bit of a discussion as to, well, how's 2026 been for you so far? We're 2 days into it, so I'm expecting big things from this. Are we all keeping well?
Well, the only thing I got for Christmas was gout, so it weren't very good. So I'm still suffering a little bit, but we're getting there now.
Did you ask for that, or did it just come of its own thing?
What was that, Sean?
I said, did you ask for gout specifically, or was it just one of those things that popped along?
Well, I could have done without it, but Christmas Day and Boxing Day, oh dear me, I was well done with it.
Isn't gout the thing that Henry VIII had that they attributed to being a king and eating rich food?
Well, if that's the case, it's getting itself mixed up, because I certainly weren't eating any rich food. I suffered with it early on in the year, and I got some tablets off the doctor, colchicine, I think they're called. It's a plant extract. Miracle stuff. But I didn't have any left Christmas, so I had to go and phone about and borrow some to get rid of it, so I could so I could just get here tonight. So.
Oh, blimey! Yeah, it's a. I mean, people say gout, and they instantly think of, like, as Sean says, it's the aristocrat's disease. It's from drinking too much port and eating too much, foie gras and blue cheese. But it's inflammatory arthritis, isn't it?
That's what it is.
It's made worse by long bouts of people not sat there like kings and queens and the rest of it, eating rich food and not moving very much. But no, I've known people in their 30s get gout, which is terrifying at the end of the day. So yeah, that's what did you do? That's a little bit worse than a lump of coal. Who have you pissed off last year? How did you upset Santa to get given gout?
Oh, best. Well, like I say, it's starting to settle now. So apart from me knee and me elbow, we're doing all right. So. But this is a quiet time of year for me anyway, so I'm not missing out on anything. So I'm I'll be all right by the time the season comes in. So.
That's all good. Well, I mean, Sean, you have a little one. So how was Christmas for you?
Do you know, it was brilliant. It was they weren't that wild. They were good. Max now understands what a present is, which is great, because he wants to open them up, and he's capable of ripping them up and ripping them open. The problem with that is you cannot have a present in the house for anybody that he doesn't want to know what's inside of it. So, even saying, I'm like, that's for your nana or that's for your granddad, he's wanting to check it out, like, just to make sure it's not a dinosaur. And the big one, who's coming up 10 in March, he was no bother. They were just great. We had Christmas Day there, and then yesterday we had New Year's Day in the house, catching up, to be fair, with stuff, because the mother-in-law didn't make a Sunday dinner on New Year's Day, which is a bit shit, but to be fair, we get a Sunday dinner every Sunday off and all the time, so she's more than welcome to put the brakes on stuff for her. But yeah, it was a really happy, really happy time for her this year. Like, really good.
Yeah. And here's the big question, though. Presents aside and New Year's celebrations, who between both you two and also all of the people we have online as well. Who's been back to work yet? Who's actually put an honest or dishonest day's labour on the books between already in the Christmas
I
perineum?
took Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and New Year's Day. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I was back to work as well because I've also got a gun shop. So I was up there in between Christmas and the New Year.
Where's your gun shop? You sound far too local to me.
It's up in Concert.
What's it called?
Derwent Valley Sales.
Okay, I remember that. I'll come and buy stuff off you.
But I've just moved into gun storage now as opposed to selling them.
All right.
Because we all know what's going to happen 18 months down the line. So I'm trying to get ahead of the game.
Go on, what do you think's going to happen?
What do I think is going to happen? I think, especially Durham Constabulary, I don't think anybody's going to have a gun license. I mean, all the guns I've got in storage at the minute, which is probably going off topic, are from lads who's had a car crash, moving house. Just reasons that years ago you wouldn't have had to surrender your guns for. So it's just, I mean, some of them guns I've had in storage for over a year now. And it's £4 a week per gun. I mean, it's sharp adds up. I know they kind of claim that money back. And if the law say they cannot keep the guns at home, then they kind of keep the guns at home. So, and that's the way I can see it going. Just for anything at all. Now Durham seem to be jumping on the bandwagon of we'll have to put your guns in storage till we sort it out. Which I've just noticed it increasing year on year. Like I say, I've been off the wildlife for about 6 years now with my illness. But in that 6 year, it's gone from selling loads and loads of guns to storing loads and loads of guns. It's
So
I don't know where it's going to end up, but it's not going to be good for anybody. That is a certainty.
I was about to say, do you think the gun licensing is just going to get tighter, or do you think we're just going to have just a blanket sort of like removal of certain types of guns or certain types of like firearm?
They're trying to bring Section 1 in with Section 2 now. So
okay, so sorry, just because this has been a lot, and we've seen this. Anyone who is a part of the countryside or anyone who is, outside of cities will have heard of this, but a lot of our listeners listening will have no idea what Section 1 or Section 2 are because they've never used anything more.
So with a firearm, anything other than a shotgun, to possess that rifle, you've got to have somewhere to shoot it, and you've got to nominate that land, gun club, whatever it is. You've got to nominate that before they'll issue with the gun. Also, if you want to change your gun and you've got a firearm certificate, it costs you money, and you've got to put in for what you call a variation on your firearm certificate, which allows you to have another gun or replace one of your guns for another caliber or even the same caliber. So that's Section 1. On the shotguns, at this minute in time, if I wanted to go out and buy another shotgun tomorrow, I'll just go and buy one, and then I'll just inform the constabulary that I've bought it. And as long as I've got no more than 12 shotguns, then there's no need for any enhanced security apart from standard security, gun cabinet, alarm, etc. But on the Section 1 stuff, it's sort of a lot more in depth, and you've got to nominate land, and you can only buy so many bullets, and blah blah blah. So if they bring the shotgun under the same umbrella, then to buy another shotgun, you would have to nominate where you want to shoot that shotgun. Which a lot of lads just shoot clears. They just go to clear clubs and shoot clears. But for them to have a choice of 2 guns, I can see it being a total nightmare. Just a total nightmare. It's one of them bits of legislation that seems to have been chucked through quickly because of recent events down in Portsmouth and what have you. So it's just, it's I don't know. It's one of them. It's up in the air at the minute, but I don't want to be in the position where I've got a shop full of guns. Nobody can buy one. So, and I'd rather just be storing them, and then I haven't even got to look at them. I just lock them away and job done. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have a big impact on other, rural pursuits, traditional pursuits like pheasant and grouse hunting, because of course that's going to impact anyone who does that massively. Anyone who's doing any kind of hunting surely is going to be impacted with this as well. Or do you think there'll be less of an impact on people who are using them, less for recreation and more for professional use? Or is it all going to be impacted in the same way?
The trouble is, it's never comes across as two separate bits of legislation. It just comes across as a blanket, like when they banned handguns, just came across as a blanket ban. It didn't matter that some lads used them for pistols, used them for target shooting. Some lads were members of clubs. They were just banned. End of. And I think we're going to go down the same road with crossbows, which, in my opinion, not be a bad thing. But it just seems to be.
Right, I don't know.
What's that, Sean?
There's actually a fence for crossbows, isn't there? You can't have crossbows out and about in public, can you?
Yeah, I mean, a crossbow you can only use for target shooting. That's the only use in the UK for the crossbows.
It is the Wildlife Countryside Act
bought a
as
crossbow.
well.
It's not like a catapult or a air rifle or something like that. If you get caught in public, whether there is offences, isn't there, having crossbows, part of crossbows, and all that sort of jazz.
Yeah. It's just everything's getting squeezed. Everything's getting squeezed. I mean, I've still got a handgun, a Humane Killer 2.2, that I've had for 30 years, and I've never used it because I've never felt the need. Because obviously, when we're digging badgers out live, using 40-ton machines on riverbanks, etc., you must have a dispatch method on site. So you can either get a vet on call at 350 quid a day, and then they'll charge you if they need to come out, or you can have a method of dispatch on site. And I got a handgun for that purpose, so I've got a method of dispatch with me. I've never had to use it, but every time it comes to my renewal, because I haven't used it, they say, do you need it? So, but you can guarantee the day that I don't have it is the day that I'll need it. So, but I don't think things like this are being taken into consideration. It's just going to be a blanket. No, you can't have it. So, I mean, it's for wiser people than me to work out, obviously. But with me being sort of an RFD, we get like little bits of knowledge that the Joe public doesn't, if that makes any sense.
So, RFD?
Registered firearm dealer.
Registered firearm dealer.
I assumed, I just didn't want to assume. No, it's interesting. I mean, it's certainly very interesting to have someone who is definitely more from the ecology side of the fence, side of the equation, because there's so much going on at the moment in the UK, is there not? Where we are having some fairly sort of like broad blanket ecological decisions being made, which with very poor science behind them, it would seem. I mean, not to get political on this, but you only have to look at high-speed rail 2 and see a lot of the corners that have been cut and a lot of the mitigations that have been made, which have had a tremendous environmental impact for the sake of building a rail line that not everyone is convinced that we need. I mean, it's a bit tricky at the moment.
Well, I've done a lot of work on HS2 in Leicestershire over the years, and I mean, if I've had 6 years off, that shows you how long it's been going on, this HS2. And we've done surveys down there and identified badger sets and this, that, and the other, all the way up for about 10 mile. But by the time it gets acted on, then them surveys are no good because they're no longer valid, because they're sort of 4 or 5 years out of date. So it's all got to be done again. And it just seems like a big total waste of money. But it'll go ahead, especially now they seem to have watered down all the mitigation needed, because it's all over with this new act that 70% now of new developments won't have to mitigate for wildlife. They'll have to take it into consideration, but there won't be any need for them to do any sort of physical mitigation.
which is, in one respect great. More land, more people, more more houses, more affordable housing. But at the same time, I mean, it's a crying shame that the thing that seems to be losing out at the moment is the wildlife, and not necessarily billionaire property developers. Anyway, to bring this full circle, should we actually introduce you to the stage, Gary? As we should have done to begin with. So, Gary, welcome to the podcast. Welcome. Would you mind just saying hello, introducing yourself? How did you get to where you are? Not necessarily what you do right now, but how did you get to the point of where you are? What was your life's journey from a bear up to where you are now?
Okay, so Gary Williams, a company called Phoenix Wildlife Consultants. And basically, we are a wildlife consultancy who specialise in exclusions and live digs. So primarily to do with badgers, foxes. We are all, everybody who works for me, we are all ecologists. But we all have our special, what we have an interest in. So with me, it's badgers. I have ecologists who work for me who do bats, newts, the whole protected species. My background was in pest control from being very young. But with pest control, I didn't actually fit the narrative. Because if I wasn't on a verbal one, at least by a Wednesday, then I wasn't trying. So I didn't fit in with the corporate line with pest control. Always had an interest in wildlife, but I fell into the badger work strangely enough, I was doing a bone pick at a cemetery in Nottinghamshire, of all places. And I used to have to go once a fortnight and pick all the bones out the graveyard because the badgers had dug them up. So I had hips, skulls, leg joints, whatever. And I was keeping these. Well, I was keeping them in the back of my van at the time. But at the time, I was driving up north to see the family on a weekend. And then I was driving back one day and I thought to myself, if I get a pull off the law, how am I going to explain my terrier chewing on somebody's head in the back of the van because it's full of bones? So the problem I had was it was a Protestant graveyard, but it was a Catholic church. And anybody who knows Nottingham will know exactly where I'm talking about. So the Catholic church, a boundary hedge with badgers in, and then a Protestant graveyard. So I'd been to see the priest, Catholic priest, get this right, Catholic priest, and he refused to bury the bones because he said they might be Protestant. And then I'd gone to see the vicar, who'd refused to bury the bones because they might be Catholic. And I had this for months and months and months. And meanwhile, while all this was going on, I was getting more and more bones in the back of my van. So in the end, I got the Salvation Army to come and bury them back in the graveyard because they weren't bothered. So, hey up.
What in the world just happened there?
I don't know. I didn't touch it. Did you touch that?
I didn't touch anything. I don't even know how to do that. Sorry, anyone watching back at home, you might want to just log back into 18 minutes and 25 seconds. StreamYard.
So that's basically how I got into badgers, because I thought to myself, right, well, there's got to be a way of stopping these badgers from digging up the graves. An exclusion when I started was sort of in its infancy. Nobody had ever done it before. So basically it was just learning on the job and, as we went along. And them days, with such as we were talking about earlier with Paul Butt and Rodney Calvert, it was people like that who had to issue you a license. This was before we were all badger licensed. They had to issue an individual license per site. So I was traveling all over the country getting different licenses for different sites. And then I realized how much of a problem the urban badgers are, because they're under buildings, they're under roads, schools, especially with porta cabins. Badgers are in there all the time. And then it just developed from there. But like I say, my old company, I had a bleed on the brain. So I had to come off work. I was off for 6 years, and then earlier on last year, I just went back into it because I just miss it. So I miss the actual
Yes.
being out there and getting it done. So
It
that's
is, you know, one of
basically me.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's one of these industries, or nested group of industries, really. That if you're in it, then you're in it, aren't you? You're either in it for 5 minutes or forever. There's no in between. But it's interesting you mentioned Paul Buck, because we have some, let's say, more seasoned listeners with us today who will remember Paul from the circuits that the BPCA and the MPTA used to do years ago, speaking about all of the terrifying and wonderful things he used to find in people's sheds. Which was a glorious talk. But one of them I remember him giving years ago was, and I hazard that you may have even been involved with this one. It was having to remove badgers from an environment, but then you were tasked with creating an entirely new set, which was created with. He put pictures up, tons and tons of chicken wire and tires to try and create this. One of the UK's first false sets, or man-made sets. Is that ringing
I'm
any
pleased to
bells?
say I'm pleased to say we've come a long way since them days of chicken mesh and tires. So set design now is of vital importance when you're doing an artificial set, because them days they used to think an artificial set was a hole in the ground that badgers used, whereas nowadays we understand that the set itself is a living thing, and it's all to do with airflow. It's all to do with chamber sizes, and any badger set in any countryside lad will tell you, the badger set in the winter when you've got them northerly winds, the northern entrances of that badger set are not used. They look almost blocked up, and that's to retain the warmth inside the badger set. Whereas back in Paul's day, bless him, it was just straight tubes with boxes with a bit of straw in, so the wind used to howl through them. And we didn't build artificial sets then. We just built glorified fox hotels. That's basically what we did, because the badgers wouldn't use the artificials, but the foxes loved them. And we've come a long way.
Yeah, not to go on a tangent, but to go on a bit of a tangent here, because again, I was speaking to a gentleman, in fact, a couple of gentlemen. There's a really good discussion. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago now, where people had stuck wildlife cameras in front of badger sets, saying, to positively identify, this is a badger, this is not a badger, I can do something with this. And more footage was coming out with badger sets having multiple different species of animals living in them in what looked like, I wouldn't say harmony, because that's a very anthropomorphized word, but certainly with a great deal of tolerance for one another. Rabbits, foxes, badgers, all seeming to use the same entrance into the same set. Is that normal, or was that abnormal, or is this something that you see happening a lot?
I mean, it's not unheard of for foxes, badgers, rabbits to use the same set. But it's more to do with a badger set is a badger set, and there would be nothing else in there because it's for badgers. Whereas the sort of places they were taking putting the wildlife cameras up, they would be sort of I don't know, I don't think what the word is, but there'd be more of what's the word? A set for everything. So they would use it the same as whereas a bat, if a bat's flying about, it starts raining, he'll go in any hole, anywhere he can find, he'll just go in to keep dry. Whereas these animals, I mean, years ago we bolted badgers out of rabbit sets with ferrets. It's just they will use these holes that's out there, but what we've learned over the years is field signs are vitally important. Badgers have got 5 toes, so it wet sand at the entrance of any hole, they'll tell you what's using it, and if it's got 5 toes, then it's obviously it's a badger or a mustelid. So 99% sure it's a badger. So everything's come a long way, even survey wise, everything's come a long way. We use a lot of them ring doorbells. If our customers got Wi-Fi, then we put up doorbell cameras. And then that way we can monitor 24/7. So anything that moves, we catch it straight away, and it's on the camera. And the camera cannot lie. If it's badgers, it's badgers. If it's foxes, it's foxes. So I think years ago when the first wildlife cameras came out, everybody jumped on the bandwagon of, we used to go to Pest and places like that, and they used to show you all these wildlife cameras and stuff. Everybody jumped on it, but they weren't using them in the right way. That they were okay for taking photographs of wildlife, but they weren't designed for surveying, because you cannot just use one piece of evidence. There's a badger at a set entrance to say that that's a badger set. You've got to.
By law, that would be, though, wouldn't it?
What's that,
Just
John?
out of interest. By law, that would absolutely be a badger set, wouldn't it? By definition. I know maybe it's not for what you are. The worry I have with that is someone's going to hear that and think, no, just because a badger's been in doesn't mean it's a badger set. If you've got a picture of a badger, is it by law, by legal definition?
In England, Sean, if you think you found a badger set, if there's been no activity at that set for 3 weeks, 21 days, that's not a badger set. In Scotland, it's slightly different because a badger set's always a badger set. But in England, 21 days without usage, that's no longer a badger set.
Is that right?
So when we do exclusions, and we've done the survey, we know there's a clan of badgers in there, say 7 badgers. So we put the gates on, the badgers come out, we count the badgers out. So that's 7 badgers out. Now, after 21 days of them badgers not entering, that's not a badger set anymore. So we can just dig that up, we can just flatten it, we can do whatever we want. So that's the way the law works. But
where does it stipulate 21 days in legislation?
On the license that you get.
Oh, so the license says it.
All right. So if you were to come to me and say, Gary, I think this is a badger set, and I went and had a look, but there was no evidence of badgers, there was no evidence of foxes, there was no evidence of anything. So we put cameras on the holes. We got 21 days of no footage. That's not a badger set.
See, the worry I have with that is, imagine a farmer has a set on his land and he puts cameras on there and there's no activity for 21 days and he bulldozes it. He would be prosecuted, wouldn't he?
If you look at the bigger picture, Sean, yeah, because if that was, say that was because we up north, we call them eyes, don't we? Because the set's got 4 eyes, which is basically to southerners holes. It's got 4 entrances. If it's a little 4 entrance set, then you've got to look at the bigger picture. There will be a main set somewhere near it. So if you find the main set somewhere near it, and that's being used, then that will be classed as an annex or a subsidiary set. Are you with us? You cannot just look at one 4 holes in the ground anywhere and say, well, that's not a badger set. We'll bulldoze it, because you've got to look at the bigger picture all the time. You've got when you do the surveys.
I know, but it just seems it seems that I can imagine that being confusing for house builders, farmers, etc., when it's 21 days and it's no longer a badger set. So if you're, I don't know, say you're a house builder up here and you think there is a registered badger set on your land, right? Registered.
Well, it's different if it's registered.
Why is it different if it's registered? It's
registered
a badger set, isn't it?
Yeah, but registered badger sets have been proven to be used. I've gone to developments before where they want to put in, I don't know, subway, some pipes or whatever, and they found some holes. And I know for a fact that them holes have been made by badgers. Yeah. But if I put cameras up and there's absolutely no activity on them holes for 21 days, that's not a badger set. That can be closed down.
So can anyone do that, or do you have to be an ecologist to say that, to give that definitive, it's closed down?
You don't have to be an ecologist to do that. It's always best to get somebody in, for want of a better word, to carry the can, when you mess up. So it's always best to be able to say, well, he said it. But the field signs are there, and we do a lot of training for house builders, facilities management companies, pest controllers who go to domestic properties on a regular basis, and we show them what to look for. And the way I look at it is, anything that a pest controller doesn't deal with, we deal with, because it's got its own legislation. So if you're talking badgers, then badger work can take place between the 1st of July and the 31st of November. That's it. So after the 31st of November, there's no more badger work. You've got to wait until the 1st of July, because that's breeding season for badgers. So although we all know that they don't drop the cubs until February, and the cubs are above ground sort of late April, beginning of May, Natural England have said, no, from the 1st of December to the 1st of June, 31st of June, that's badger season, and you're not allowed to touch them. So that's the time of year when you would build your artificial sets ready for the season starting. So, I mean, badgers are nomadic, especially young male badgers, young boars. When they get chucked out for 6 or 7 months, they can be nomadic, and they can move to 6, 7, 8, 9 different spots in that time. And if we were to say that every time that visits a hole, it's a badger set, then you would start to get problems. So when you're dealing with badgers, the only thing to bear in mind is it in use? So is it, at the time of finding it, is there any use? Is there any signs of that badger set's being used? And if there's no signs it's being used, and you can prove for 21 days that it hasn't been used, then you just close it down, because it's not a badger set.
Here's a question, because I was always under the belief that you say badgers are nomadic. Imagine not all badgers are nomadic, because we've got populations of badgers, and we've had sets. You know, there have been some country estates who have been known to have badger sets on their grounds, you know, under their country manors for 100+ years. I'm trying to find it. There was a case done. So how do we have those two things? You know, a nomadic animal and then sets which are occupied for 100+ years. So
you've got an established clan of badgers. So you'll have the dominant sow, the dominant boar, and then the siblings that come off that. November, December time, the dominant boar will go around and it will chase off all the young males. Just chase them off. So they've then got no territory, so they need to wander. And every time they wander somewhere and there's another clan, they'll just get chased off. They've got to try and find somewhere where there's no badgers. So, and if they do find somewhere where there's no badgers, why are there no badgers? If it's suitable habitat, there's got to be a reason why there's no badgers there, which is in turn leads us back to urban badgers, because these badgers will obviously get nearer and nearer and nearer towns, and then they'll start living in town centres and city centres, and there's no competition. The food's readily available, and obviously the denning sites are ready made for them, because they're straight under somebody's house or straight under a building or under a road.
And definitely want to sort of like push a bit further into this urban wildlife thing, but just to preface this, do we have, or do you think that we are getting more and more urban wildlife occurring? Because we've had a couple of people on previously who have said, urban wildlife, urban foxes especially, they're on the rise. We're getting more and more of them. Do you think it's the same thing? No, so number one, so is it the same thing with badgers? Are we getting more urban badgers, or are we simply just more aware that there are urban badgers there? And if we are getting more, why? What is causing that migration from countryside living to urban living?
Well, I think the point is that any animal, it doesn't matter what it is, you'll know this with your pest control, they need 3 things. They need food, they need water, and they need somewhere to live. They need, so that's basically the 3 things that they need. And when these badgers are finding they're coming into city centres and town centres, and that they're going behind takeaways and they're eating pizzas and kebabs, and the food's there for them, the water's there for them, and then obviously the harbourage is there for them as well, because the humans, when we build something, we don't proof it. We just build it to design. So if it's got gaping holes underneath, then that's the way it was meant to be in its design. But that falls in lovely with the badger, because that's what he's looking for. So, I mean, we probably do 10, 15 urban badgers a year with different degrees of different problems. But the majority of them are exclusions from under buildings because the badgers have moved in, and they're only there because just round the corner there's free food. I mean, the food that they're eating is no good for them. It's not doing them any good. But which brings me on to the people feed them, and I'll say to them, well, would you chuck food out for the rats? And they'll be like, no. So why are you chucking it out for the badgers? Because you want the photograph, and you're not giving it tidbits. You're giving it main meals. So you're altering that animal's behaviour. So if the badger turns up, you're feeding them every night. Well, that next generation of badgers, they don't need to forage because you've taught them that they get fed here. So the territory's getting smaller because they don't need to wander. And it's the same with foxes because people have got a habit of trying to humanise everything they come across.
Yes.
That's basically it. It's just they say they love animals, but they don't love them enough to respect the fact that they're wild. They want them to be human. So they want to feed them. They want to, I see it on
I feel
Facebook
like you used to be a terrierman.
Pardon?
I feel like you used to be a terrierman.
No, I used to be a lurcher man. Years ago.
Yeah, I got that. You have that aura.
Yeah, but terriers wasn't my thing, but lurchers was. So, but yeah, it's. I don't know what it is, Sean. I don't know whether it was because I was brought up in the countryside and we've got a natural understanding and a respect of the animals that's there, or whether I'm just pissed off with people in general for wanting to humanise everything they touch.
I can tell you a story which sums up human nature perfectly. One of my good friends was a keeper over the Otterburn area, and was accused of shooting a hen harrier. Hen harrier goes over a hill, doesn't come back, and they were absolutely incensed and said, "You've shot it." Blah blah blah. He ended up going in for an interview. And in the end, his solicitor said to them, "You'll have to tell them the truth, like." And he said, "It's not shot. It's 2 hills over that way. All of you sitting looking at it with your fucking telescopic lenses, and it upset them that much that they picked up and moved." So that is just human nature, isn't it? Like they've got no respect for what they're doing, and they're quick to carry on the way they carry on. But it was them causing all the damage and all the issues to these. And you see it with badgers, don't you? They've promoted them and promoted them and promoted them. And now, I don't know, what do you think? Hedgehogs, do you think they're getting battered off them?
Well, yeah. Well, badgers have been eating hedgehogs since time immemorial, haven't they? Yeah. It's what they eat. But down to the hedgehogs, we have no hedgerows anymore because all these new housing estates are fences or walls. You've took the hedgehog's territory and you've done that, and then you've said, right, I need 100,000 hedgehogs in that. Well, it doesn't work because the 100,000 hedgehogs fits into that, not into a little nucleus. So it's competition for. I was reading something today where we get flea spray for the dogs, and the vets say, let's do them once a month. So. Yeah. We're spraying these dogs once a month with all these flea sprays. The dogs are going out and rolling on the grass. The earthworms are then getting the chemical on them. They're drying out and dying, which again is a direct food source for the hedgehogs. Now you've got all them hedgehogs in that little area trying to eke a living out of what's there. But even down to just something like flea spray, which has killed off all the invertebrates. So there's nothing for the hedgehogs. So the hedgehogs need to wander, and then they wander into the badger's territory, and it's just everything's connected. And you read.
I don't know how true this is, but I was told of a place that's been netted to big fence put around it for ground nesting birds because the hedgehogs are eating the eggs. In massive numbers.
And they do. And they do.
Yeah, so they are catching the hedgehogs and putting them outside the wood, like the the big fence.
outside the fence.
And the badger numbers on the outside were massive. There was even the hedgehogs kicking them out. The badgers were just slaughtering them every night. Like, have that.
I mean, I've done a lot of work down in Lincolnshire on the wolves with badgers.
The fens.
And the fens, yeah. They're all massive RSPB reserves. Massive and they've got drop taps for hedgehogs in the fence line. And they catch the hedgehogs, release them outside the fence. So, you know, that's how bad of a problem the hedgehogs are down there. And, you know, they do control other predators on them reserves as well, which they don't like to publicise, but they do it. So it's all like people saying.
Do you think at some point we'll go full circle and the message will change from, because at the minute it's like all fur babies and fur mummies and all that sort of shit, isn't it? Do you think at some point the message will change and there'll be a degree of, trying to think the right word to say, like a degree of responsibility in the way that we deal with wildlife, and we are more inclined to leave it alone rather than carry on like that, or we are more inclined to understand that it needs to be controlled in particular areas and et cetera, et cetera. Do you think we're stuck in we are now stuck in a mindset of fur babies and fur mummies and cockapoodles on harnesses and extendy leads?
Well, I think we've gone too far down that road you're talking about. Too far down the Enid Blyton road of everything's cuddly and everything needs looking after. And I think the younger generation don't understand that we have predators and we have prey species. And the two need, you know, to create the circle of life, everything needs to fit in that circle. But now they want to. Well, what I was saying before, they just want to pet everything, because they say, "Oh, we love it, so we're going to feed it. We love it, so we're going to do this, we're going to do that." They're not doing the animals any good in the long run, because you're altering natural behaviour. So I think it would take a big sweep the other way before. I mean, I don't know what you think of the lynx and everything else being reintroduced.
It's ridiculous. They're just going to eat the sheep, aren't they? They're just going to eat cows. And for the first however many years, the farmers will claim an amount for it. But then the problem is they'll only pay you for the lynx that they actually kill. And then there'll be a lot of yows will abort and et cetera, and then there'll be 1,000 million arguments over why it wasn't the lynx, and the lynx are eating the deer and blah 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 and all that shit. And I don't know. I don't see the benefits of introducing an apex predator that's been missing for such a long period of time, especially when the people who introduce it will have a skewed vision on how to present the data. So
I have nothing personally against the rewilding of Britain, but it needs to be done in a way that is balanced. You can't simply, as Sean says, drop in an apex predator to an environment that's had it absent for, if not generations and hundreds of years at the very least, that has found its own, readdressed its own balance. If you're going to rewild Britain, you need to look at everything, from your creepy crawlies all the way up to your apex predators. You need to rebuild that entire chain, and I'm all for that. We've lost a lot of things, but I mean, to go on a slight tangent, if you look at these conservation projects, if you look at a lot of these big things, the ambassador species that we talk about, how many billions of pounds get pumped into pandas every year, for example, and they are biologically speaking, the worst animal on the planet. They deserve, if there ever was an animal that deserved extinction, it is the panda. They are useless, but they're
the largest animal that picked up the lowest quality food, didn't they? I think we'll eat this.
But they're a fantastic ambassador, which means a lot of conservation projects focus on these ambassador animals, and they do not focus on the rest of that ecology that sits underneath it. So you have a big stink about people releasing wolves back in, or releasing things like lynxes back in, but we don't talk about releasing in other small mammals or bird species, or even sort of like the conservation of certain insect species, stag beetles, for example, which are a fantastic recycler of dead wood. Anyway,
when I put the training together, I always use a scenario of, I'll say to somebody, right, you've got a nice plate there of a nice bowl of hot jelly. Now you take out a spoonful of that jelly and you let that jelly set. And then that cold jelly, that spoonful, you put it back in. You can't, because it's formed, hasn't it? It's gone full circle. So that bit's gone and everything else is just formed around it. So the whole food chain has developed a different way because that top predator's gone. So you kind of just come along with a top predator and stick it in. You've got to start from the bottom again. So, you know, when you talk to these rewilders, for want of a better word, they just don't seem to get it. Now, if your top predator had been missing for 10 years, then that's fine. Fair enough, stick one back in. But after hundreds of years, you can't just grab a lynx and throw it in the pot and say, well, crack on with it, because it just doesn't fit.
It always makes me giggle, you know, because they're trying to reintroduce the lynx. Yet you've got the Scottish wildcat up there that could possibly still be saved. And you think, why don't you concentrate on that? Like, why don't you concentrate on the Scottish wildcat? And they're like, nah, we think introducing lynx into Kielder is a far better idea. And you're like, it's going. There's less Scottish wildcats than there is giant pandas, but because it's not the narrative, is it? And this is my frustration with it, that it comes down to how people feel rather than what's right and wrong. Like it seems to be there's no checks and balances, and it just comes down to people's feelings on what they want to do, doesn't it? Where it's like, oh no, we think lynx will be great here. Like, put your money into the Scottish wildcats, fucking none of them.
I almost brought this one up because this one is a very divisive subject, which is the reintroduction of beaver. Because on the one hand, they've been clearly shown to have a huge benefit on water mitigation and flood damage mitigation, you know, by knowing where to build dams, because that's what beavers do. And on the flip side of that, they've been very clearly seen to have flooded, you know, large areas of land which people did not want to get flooded. So it would be very interesting to hear your thoughts as an ecologist on the reintroduction of beavers. You know, not necessarily a top predator, but definitely a disruptor.
One of my ecologists is heavily involved with the beaver reintroduction down in Somerset. That's what he's been doing for the last 10 years, working with beavers. We have many discussions about it, shall we say. It's okay introducing the beaver on the river. I can't remember what river it was. Bute, I think it was. Anyway, or Brew, the River Brew, that was it, the Brew. I said, that's fine. That's fine, absolutely fine. How are you going to keep it there? Because, you know, you cannot keep the beaver in that one area. And that's where you've done all your planning, you've done all your mitigation's been done for that one area. But what happens when that beaver's ups and offs and goes somewhere else? And that other area is not suitable. So when he builds his dams there and he starts causing flooding further down the river, then what are you going to do there? Again, it's I think with ecologists, and I've worked with some fantastic ecologists over the years, but I've also worked with some shite ecologists over the years, from many different things. Now, ecologists love the sexy species, love it. They love it because it's all money for research and development. It's all money for plans this and plans that and plans the other. But what they're not realizing is it's all the species that's getting left behind that there's no research for. You know, and eventually we're going to come to a stage where they want to get behind some of these, like the Scottish wildcats, but there isn't going to be any money left because they'll have spent it all on everything else that's sexy. I mean, when I was doing pest control, when I was first training many moons ago, me and Moses probably in the same boat because it was that long ago. All we got told about wildlife was, no, we don't do it. That was it. You know, anything out the norm was like, no, we don't do it. We don't do it. Tell the customer we don't do it. And you couldn't go to an ecologist. I'll probably get wrong for saying this, but ecologist is like us and them, and it always has been.
Yeah.
You've got the big boys club here who are all ecologists, university trained, blah, 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 blah. You've got the pest controllers on this side who carry out a really fantastic service, who would be more used to them ecologists than a textbook or hearing something third hand, because these lads are on the ground and these lads know what's happening. But it's always been at us and them. There's never been anybody in the middle who could say, oh, you found this, oh, let's have a look at this. Tell your customer you can do this, tell your customer you can do that. It's just been a, no, you're not doing it. And I mean, you've got to think, when I was doing pest control many moons ago, we were never trained to get rid of pests. And that sounds really weird, but that wasn't the plan. Because if you solved a pest problem, that was less revenue because you weren't needed. Less revenue meant less contracts, meant no job. And that's the training we used to get. It wasn't, or go in, get it done, solve the problem, get out. It was totally the opposite, because it was all about numbers, big contracts, this many contracts, that many contracts. So if you wanted to solve a problem, I mean, some of the jobs I was on, and you'll know this yourself, they were sold on time. So you might get a card and it might have 5 minutes on it. So that's all you would have. You'd have 5 minutes to go in there, check the mouse box, put a date in it, close the mouse box, out you come. Because if you were in there 6 minutes, you were then costing the company money, because you should be on the road going to another job. And I'm pleased to see that pest control's changed, or at least I hope it's changed. And it seems to have, with a lot more independence now than what there was then. So people are more concentrating now more on integrated pest management. So they're trying to solve the problem as opposed just to having contractual value on the books. So sorry, I'm going off topic again, but
no, you're absolutely not going off topic, because I say this a lot, that things like to wind this back, what's the difference between healthcare and pest control? Nothing. Just one prevents disease and the other one cures disease. What's the difference between conservation and pest management? One is wanting to keep a species alive, and the other one is wanting to control a species in order to protect everything else. We're all on the same teeter-totter, on the same balance here. And you're right. And there have been, I would say, a lot of times that we have reached out as an industry or as an individual to other industries like conservation, like ecology, only to be met with, and not to put too fine a point on it, but scorn, or sort of like to be looked down on. You just kill things. You just kill things. What do you know? What would you know about the terribly important and things that we are doing here? And it's irritating, because you say that there's a huge amount that we can learn from one another, us, as an industry, from ecologists, and, as you say quite rightly, vice versa. There's probably a lot that we could teach ecologists around how some of these pest animals, or animals that are considered pests, have impacts on the animals that they are trying to protect. So there we go. Is Alex on?
Tell you what, though, before we go, I know that I hope this will be a good question. Tell us about your most interesting, or your funniest, or your weirdest job that you've done with badgers.
With badgers, I was on to Hugh before we come on. Paul Butt. I had to meet Paul Butt and Rodney Calvert down in, and I'm almost sure it was, let's just say Kent, but it was down that way. And Rodney Calvert had said, meet us at the pub. He says, we'll have a spot of lunch and well, I'll tell you the job. So we went down, and there was a gentleman buying an old historic ruin castle as a wedding present for his new wife. And he was buying this ruin for £1. He's only paying £1 for it. And it was sort of like 17th century. That was lovely. So anyway, I met Rodney Calvert in the pub. But I noticed when I went in that Guinness was half price. So
I can see where this is going.
So by the time I got out the pub, I couldn't even remember what the meeting was about. Never mind how much I'd quoted, because we were pissed as farts. So when we went to see the customer the next day, and he was asking what we were going to do, I didn't have a clue because I couldn't remember, because I was that drunk, I couldn't remember. So, but anyway, he bought a romantic ruin for £1, and it cost him £37,000 to get rid of the badges out of it. So it wasn't as cheap as he thought it was. So, and that was, but I've had a few of them. I mean, the funniest pest control story I can ever think of. Years ago, when I used to do pest control, there used to be people called, and there still is, field biologists. And you would go and do a job, and then this field biologist would follow you around, and then he would give a report a couple of weeks later saying, you'd missed this box, you'd missed that box, you hadn't marked that box. And at the time, it was all to do with your bonus. So if you got so many percent, you got a bonus. So anyway, I'd been into this rather large food manufacturing place, marking the boxes. And the biologist had gone in a couple of weeks later, and he'd come up with this, oh, you'd missed box 33, 34, 36, 41. And I was like, yeah, because there was loads of pallets in front of them. And I thought I couldn't get to them. Well, I got to them, and I thought, did you really? So the next time I went, I left the biologist a load of notes in the boxes. And one of the most pleasant things I said was, you're a fucking dickhead. And that was probably the only one I can repeat on here. But I'd left all these notes in all these boxes all the way along this back wall. And I thought to myself, right, if I don't get a warning, he hasn't done them boxes. So I thought no more of it.
I don't get a warning, he hasn't done them. Fucking brilliant.
3 weeks later, I get a call into the office. Can you come in the office, please? So I went in the office. And I'd gone in, and I thought it was the biologist, because I'd left him all these letters. And they'd had a complaint from Weetabix, because their auditors had been round doing the boxes, and they'd found all my notes. And I got a final warning for that, I think. So, but it was brilliant. So I never got a bonus though, so which is strange.
but at least they got to the boxes, man. I mean, that's good news.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it was always the same. We used to go in, you couldn't get anywhere near a box for pallets, but it just seemed that every time the field biologist went, it was empty, so they could just get straight to the boxes. But I mean, it's
because the field biologists will say things that they'll turn around and be like, and they'll give the company a sort of like they'll give them a warning saying you've got to have at least a foot or a foot standoff between the walls and the pallet so you can get around. So you find that most people, when they realise the field biologists are turning up, they're just like, that's it, everything gets squared away, everything gets tidied up, and then the following week when you guys go back in again, it's just straight back to sort of like
yeah. I used to think to myself, if I couldn't get to them boxes, then Fatty didn't get to them. Definitely not, because he couldn't get in the gaps I could get in. But I think it was a lot to do with make sure you didn't get your bonus as well at the time. I still think that was a lot to do with it. So.
Oh, they were getting their bonus on the. How many bonuses that they stopped people getting was their bonus.
Yeah. It was a different world. So.
Yeah, if that was the old stuff, what would a typical job be like for you now?
So for me now, well, the last one I did this year was foxes under a house in a place called, what was it called? Just outside Nailsea in Bristol. And it was.
Why did they? I don't want to sound rude here, but why did they get you in for foxes in Bristol when you can literally shift them yourself with no license?
Well, it was badgers. It was badgers in Bristol,
Right.
And that was a word of mouth job come through Rob Collins, you know, the country's what's he called, the country's hedge creep or something he called yourself, Rob. You'll know Rob.
Yeah.
He's
I know exactly.
Yeah.
The Mucha, not Mucha. Edge. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So anyway, I've gone down to this job, and they'd had badgers under the house since COVID. So since 2019, they've had badgers living under the house. So went down, had a look, and the retaining walls under the house were just crippled. The badgers had dug out all the founds and everything. It was a real mess. So that would be a typical job. I mean, that was quite easy because it was one entrance in and one entrance out, because it was a hole under the what like an old wood store under the house. So basically, as I was saying before, we put the one-way gates on with some mesh. Badgers come out. 3 weeks later, 21 days, then we sign that off as no longer being a badger set, and you just proof it up so they kind of get back in. So, and hence that's why I started the Phoenix again, because when such as pest controllers are going around on the daily things, and facilities managers and plumbers and electricians or whoever it is, they're coming across wildlife all the time. And instead of saying, no, we don't deal with that, with Phoenix, there's an outlet you can say, well, we don't actually deal with that, but I know somebody who does. And then we can go in and we can assess it from there and give them the information. So, and then do the job. So it's it's trying to get a bit closer to the pest controllers, because we're already close to the ecologists, but we're trying to get a bit closer to the pest controllers. So eventually everybody's working on the same platform, on the same seesaw. So everybody can keep everybody else right.
Do you think the ecologists would be more likely to accept pest controllers if they did more training that they saw as suitable? Whether it is or it isn't, I don't want to go down that route. But if like the ecologists provided some sort of, because they love a name and a letter and number after the name, don't they? So like, if we could get something like that, would that help?
Well, I think we're a long way off, and this is no disrespect to pest controllers, but I think we're still a long way off the pest controller being held in that sort of esteem. And I'll tell you exactly for why. Because you've still got such as your window cleaners saying, I'll do that wasp nest for you. Up a ladder and you'll do a wasp nest. And they're still undercutting the professional pest controller. And I think it'll always be like that. As long as them two markets are running like that. You've got your professional rodenticide, your professional chemicals, and you've got your amateur use. And I think as long as them two are running like that, I don't think pest controllers are ever going to get up there. And it's a shame but it's the way it's always been. So, I mean, the amount of times I've turned up to jobs where an old deer's put loads of rat poison, Rotex blocks and whatnot, on a bird table because it's for rats. And I've said, well, yeah, but the birds are eating them. If it doesn't say birds on this packet, it just says rats and mice. So that they're just putting them on there. But Joe Public can go in and buy the amateur stuff, but there's no follow-up apart from what's on the back of the packet. I mean, how long has it took us to get rid of glue boards? Forever. So it's just, and I can still take you to places now who'll sell you glue boards in packs of 50. So, it's just not seen in the right light. And I think with the associations we've got now with the BPCA, the NPTA, and all these other outlets now, I think pest controllers can start to build that level of professionalism. But as long as we've got that amateur market, you wouldn't have Joe from number 23 come to service your boiler. You just wouldn't have it, would you? You want somebody who was Corgi registered, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry, I'm vaping.
No, it's okay. I mean, so building on that, I mean, how to phrase this question? So with pest controllers who are looking for ecologists. I've done it a couple of times now. I've had a specific job. I've either been looking for some bat mitigation, or newt mitigation was one of the big ones I worked on a couple of years back. But trying to find the right people to work with this that have an understanding of not just ecology, but the real world practical ramifications of what their suggestions are going to entail, is very, very difficult. So where would you recommend that we as a community, as an industry, looked for finding good, useful ecologists to help us move our industry along?
Well, I think as we said before, ecologists, closed body, they're not interested. So you've got to build up a relationship with them before they'll even, give you anything. But what we try and do with Phoenix is, I mean, if you phone me up and say, Gary, I think there's newts in this pond, the first thing I would say to you was, have you got any carpet tiles? Get some carpet tiles and just walk around the pond and drop them.
Mm-hmm.
Leave them for 3 weeks, go back, lift them up. If there's newts in that pond, the newts will be under the carpet tiles, because obviously you've created a habitat for them, and that's where they're going to be. So straight away, that tells you whether you've got newts in that pond. Now, if you've got an ecologist to come out and tell you, that might have cost you, I don't know, 600-700 quid. I mean, it's 150 quid to get the water DNA'd, but you only do that if you've got grey crested newts, because you send the water off, they'll send it back and tell you whether it's got newt DNA in straight away, so you'll know straight away. But little things like putting carpet tiles down to see if you've got toads, newts, any sort of amphibian will use the carpet tiles. It's cheap, it's easy, they don't take up any room in your van, and it's free. And it's an extra service that you can give to your customer. You can say, well, let's just make sure you've got them first. And then you put them down. So you're halfway there, so you know whether you've got newts or not. And then it would come to the likes of Phoenix, who we work with ecologists all over the UK, say, Gary, there's any chance I can get somebody out there to have a look? So, yep, we'll meet your pest controller on site, take him round, show him what he's looking for. So basically he's getting some on-site training straight away. And it's new to him, and it's something different. So he's not going to forget it. And then straight away, you'll never have that problem again, because you'll know just to use the carpet tiles to begin with. And then obviously if it needs anything further after that, then we can go down that road. And it's also a good revenue stream for your pest controllers as well, because if we pick up a job because of your recommendation, then you're getting a commission for that as well. So, but that's bats in lofts, I mean, we've all done this in the pest control thing, where they show you the bat dropping when if it turns to dust,
it's crumbly.
Then it's,
yep.
If it's like plasticine, then it's mice. And if it tastes salty, it's fresh. We've all done that one. So you got to remember that bats hanging in one place, droppings are always going to just be in one place, whereas your mice, as we know, are just scattered everywhere. So the likelihood is, if it's all in one place, it's mice. There's also got urine pillars which build up with bats. So little things that we can teach pest controllers as we're going along. That's something that Phoenix is trying to do. So everybody's got I'm not saying everybody's going to be an expert by no means, but everybody's got that little bit of knowledge which helps. Yeah. Which helps. And it also
level foundation. Yeah.
Yeah. And it works both ways, because if we're doing somewhere that's had badgers, the badgers are gone, but the rats are in there, then we just put that back to the pest control and say, there's a rat job there, because we don't get involved with pests. So
and this is how it should be. There should be a lot more symbiosis, for want of a better word, between ecologists and pest control, between EHOs and pest control, between a lot of these, as I said, nested industries that should do this. I mean, Hugh's made a point which I don't necessarily agree with, but it'd be interesting to hear your two opinions on this, which is Hugh says the problem is with ecologists, surveyors, environmental health officers, because they have been to university, they have a feeling of superiority. Not all, as I've met some really good ones, but he believes that the fact that they've been through this higher education gives them this opinion that they are better than us.
And I wouldn't disagree with that at all. I wouldn't disagree with that. It's big boys club, all seam and everything else. I mean, I got into ecology. I've never been to university. Comprehensive education. I used to be there for my dinner, and that was it. I was away, back down the wood. But I got my licenses through sheer hard work, having to go through all the things and then having to get somebody to sign you off, get somebody to do this, do that. And it wasn't easy, and it took years, but I got it. But even now, when I go to ecological conferences, they look down the nose at me because I wasn't at this university, I wasn't at that university, I wasn't at the other university. So, but I can hold my own with them. If they want to talk bats, badgers, whatever, I can hold my own with them because I know it. So it's as much about educating your EHOs, your ecologists. So whoever the pest controller needs to educate, and with us now having, or with yous now having the forums, and you've got the companies now to do it, then your NPTAs, your BPCAs, they should be focusing on that. They should be focusing on them. They've got the clout now. They can go to the local AHO and say, right, let's have 5 or 6 years in, because I want to show you what these lads know, and impress them. Yeah,
that does already happen, and that's there used to be for years and years a very good relationship between a couple of the universities, a big university, I think Warwick was one of them, and the BPCA, where they would take them out and they would show the EHOs. But even then, the EHOs get shown pest control is one unit for one semester over a 3-year period. It is the equivalent of something like 30-40 hours worth of work. It's not it's not a huge amount of information, but yes, I believe that they should have a bit more experience to that, and there is this bias where it's skills, knowledge, and behavior, isn't it? And you can teach knowledge and you acquire skills, but you have to have that behavior flat out.
Sorry, go on. Sorry, go on, Gary. What are you saying?
I was going to say we're still a way off. With these other organisations, seeing the professionalism. Now, the difference for me is I've seen how much work goes into pest control. I've seen what these lads have got to do, and I've seen what they've got to learn, and it's a lot to learn. There's a lot more to learn about rats, mice, insects than there'll ever be about badgers, because badgers is one species, whereas the pest controllers, you've got rats, mice, water voles, you've got shrews, you've got this, you've got that, the other, and you've all got to know the difference between all these little things. So it takes a lot of study. I was saying before that I'd worked with some really good ecologists. I've worked with some really good pest controllers, but I've worked with some shit pest controllers as well. Yeah. I've worked with pest controllers who, God forgive me, but they've been out with a terrier, they've killed a few rats, they've done a bit of ferreting, then all of a sudden they've got adverts, pest control. It's not pest control. Yeah. It's an extension of your hobby, isn't it? That's where it is. It's not sitting down, getting the level 2 qualification. And now with the CPD stuff going forward, I've just lost my grandfather rights because I've no interest in rodenticide at all, because up until the end of the year I could buy it, but I can't remember the last time I bought it. And I totally agree with the further development of pest controllers, but you're never going you're never going to replace practical experience. Because when I first started, my job was to carry the technician's bag, and I did that for 2 years. I carried his bag everywhere he went. And then after the 2 years, I went and sat my course, and I got, I passed. But I'd only passed because I'd watched what he'd done for 2 years. And I knew it off by heart. But that was my apprenticeship into pest control. Whereas now some companies are like, come and get a 7-day course and then get out on the road, which is not, we're never going to make professional pest controllers in 7 days. So you should be learning every day when you go out. I'm still learning now about wildlife when I go out. But it's only because you're seeing something different every time you go on. And AHOs and ecologists think they can just cover pest control with just this one little blanket where you cannot. Because as we know, there's that many different shots coming on and off it. It's food for thought, isn't it? But we definitely need to get stuck into them. So, when I meet my ecologists, I'm always singing the praises of the pest controller, and I'm always telling them to use the pest controller. So if you've got a problem, use your local pest controller, because he'll know. Now, if you've got foxes living under a school, get in touch with your local pest controller, and he'll tell you where the hot spots for the rats are. Especially if you've been watching this vixen coming in with just rats, then he'll know where they are. And then you can work together to try and get that sorted.
So with that, do you believe that, and we kind of like half touched on this, and you've mentioned your grandfather rights and qualifications. One of the things that really annoys me is when you see people saying things like, yes, and then, that guy that ferrets, or that guy that goes and plinks some rats down on a farm, puts an advert out, fully licensed pest controller, because they've done the 1 day, basic use of rodenticides or safe use of rodenticides, and because they've got that qualification, because they've got their ticket, they are now a fully licensed pest controller. Which makes a mockery of what we do, because there's no real understanding or distinction between your level 2 award, your level 2 certificate, and then onto your level 3. So from your point of view as someone who's, straddling both camps, and we ask this of everyone, licensing, should we be licensed? Do you think that licenses would make us look like a more professional industry? Or, in ecology terms, I hear some bad things that ecologists say about licensing and how it's misused and abused, and generally speaking, it's not done in the right way.
I don't know any other industry where you can call yourself a professional after doing a 1-day course. And if you think of all the industries, or even hod carrying, if that's a thing anymore, you couldn't call yourself a professional hod carrier after doing 1 day. It's the only industry where we can say, well, come and do this, come and do that. A couple of days here, a couple of days there. There you are, your license, you can go and do it. It just don't work. It's just ecologists, because they do all this study and they do all these university things, they do all these lectures, they do all these courses. They call themselves professional because they've done the training. So pest controllers, you're expected to learn on the job. And I know everybody's got to start somewhere. And some of my best mates who still go out with the terriers and the lurchers and they do a bit of ferreting, but they wouldn't dream of calling themselves pest controllers. They call themselves rabbit experts, or they may call themselves pigeon shooters for wood pigeons or whatever. But you couldn't put them under one umbrella and say, right, you're a pest controller. Because it takes years to learn. Well, I'm not saying that you're going to learn everything, but it takes years to learn how to do a job. And you can't just be expected to walk into it and away you go. It's just, you just can't do it. So,
absolutely.
I used to work at Weetabix at Burton Latimer, doing the fumigation. And when I went there, I'd done it all on paper. I was a fumigator. I had the badge, everything. When I went there, I was totally out of my depth. I didn't have a clue. For the first 4 or 5 months, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was just going through the motions. But it's only when you've been there a while and you've learned the different things that you can actually say, well, yeah, I'm a fumigator now, because it's experience, and there's no substitute for experience. Definitely not. I mean, everybody, like I say, everybody's got to learn somewhere. But in my opinion, a one-day course is just not. No, it's there's too many possibilities, too many scenarios. It's just doesn't work.
Absolutely.
I'm waiting to be shot down.
No, that's all right. We're coming up to the 11th hour now. So, I mean, Sean, have you got any other questions? Otherwise, I'll go in for my favourite.
If you weren't doing badgers, what would you do?
What would I do?
Yeah, like if badgers are your thing now, imagine tomorrow you never had to do another badger. What other animal would you look at? What would you want to do? And why?
What would I do? See, well, I've had all my licenses. I've had newts. I've had bats. I think I've been through most protective species. I think I probably want to do something like water vole conservation. Something, you know, where you would make a difference. Something where you're actually making a difference as you were going along. But I'm never going to run out of badgers, Sean.
Because they're going to get more and more, aren't they? And you're going to be a busy boy.
They're just everywhere. They're just every. I mean, I'm talking because countryside badgers don't interest me whatsoever because they're where they're meant to be. They're in the countryside. Urban badgers are the next big, massive problem. And especially now with all this, as we hit before about all the new legislation, now that these smaller sites haven't got to mitigate, then the urban badgers are just gonna start turning up everywhere, because now they won't have to look for badgers. They won't have to build any artificial sets. They'll just be building the houses, and you know, within the first 3 or 4 weeks of them being up, the badgers will be back in. They'll be back. They'll be there. So yeah. So if I wasn't doing badgers, I'd probably do something like water vole conservation. I'll retire to Lanzarote, whichever comes first.
Is that fairly common for ecologists? You know, I mean, from my experience, it is. But to focus in on just one species, or do you have like multidisciplinary ecologists out there, people who will do bats and badgers?
Yeah, I've probably got an ecologist for every protected species. So I've got one for newts, got one for badgers. We've got a few for badgers, got a few for newts, bats, you know, dormice, beavers. So whatever the protected species is, with one phone call, I can get somebody in that area onto it.
Yeah, but I mean, sorry, I mean, so do you find ecologists? So is there an ecologist out there that do bats and badgers, or do they tend to just stick to one species at a time?
You know what I was saying before. I've worked with some really good ecologists, and I've worked with some really shit ones. Well, the ones who do everything, or think they can do everything, are the ones who you have problems with. But the lads who specialise in that species, if they just specialise in the one, if they just specialise in bats, then they know everything they can know about bats. If they just specialise in dormice, they can know everything they know about dormice. So it's it's the same as everything. You know, I do believe that. You know, you cannot be a jack of all trades. You know, you've got to, especially with wildlife, because it's that time consuming and everything else, that you've got to pick your species and then just stick at it. I mean, what these lads know about bats today, all this up to date, in 30 years' time, that will be frowned upon, because we'll have come 30 years on and we'll know a lot more, because technology will have brought us even further on. So yeah, there is ecologists who will specialise in just that species, and there is ecologists who will try and cover the whole lot. But most ecologists, they'll take the job, but then they'll sub it out to somebody who knows. So they'll say, yeah, we can sort that out for you, but it's actually somebody else who's actually going out and doing that. Somebody who knows what they're doing will be out there doing it.
Right.
Awesome. You look as though you've got one last in you there, Sean. You look as though you are just chewing something over mentally.
just sitting bouncing around my head, and you think, yeah, like how different your life could have been, because that definitely would have been something that would have interested me. Doing what you're doing is the type of thing that would have interested me at one point. But you're absolutely right, jack of all trades, master of none in it. Like we know what we do, and we're comfortable doing what we do. We've got to pick up maybe one or two things every now and again, but I don't know, like traveling the country to move badgers is absolutely not would definitely not be my cup of tea. I would find that incredibly frustrating, doing all that traveling to put a gate on and stuff like that.
Well,
That would stress me the hell out.
Just before Christmas, I went to a place called Leon Solent down in Hampshire.
Oh yeah,
Just to reassure an old gentleman that he can have his garden back come July, because he was panicking that he would have to give his garden up to the badgers. So it was 325 mile there, 325 mile back, and I just went down there just to reassure him that come July he'll have his garden back. And he's 84-year-old bloke, being told off loads and loads of different organisations. No, you'll just have to give your garden to the badgers. Blah 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 blah. So I went down there just to reassure him, but I'd get something out of that. They just reassuring, making sure that it's done, because there's nothing worse. Doesn't matter what job you do, there's nothing worse than turning around to a customer and saying, "Sorry, I cannot do that." It's
do you ever clash with the badgers? The Badgers Trust, is it the Badger Trust? BCT, Badger
Trust.
Conservation Trust, yeah.
Well, put it this way, Sean, I've got a 10-year-old van just in case. Because I've had run-ins with them before. And again, they don't understand the concept of, I'm not hurting any badgers.
Yeah.
I'm moving them on. I'm pissing them off. But I'm not hurting anything. I'm not, it's like before with a handgun. I've had that handgun 30 years. I've never had to use it. Because if you do the job properly, you should never see a badger. Should never see one. But you see them all the time. They get on a cause. They're on Facebook. They're everywhere. And they couldn't sit here and have a discussion like we are. Because they've got this one narrative in their head, and they just want to hit you with that one narrative all the time. They're not willing to open up or see where you're coming from. So the answer to your question is, quite over the years, quite a few.
I'm not on first name terms with them. Let's put it that way. They fucking hate me, don't they?
But when you show somebody a skull out the window, they tend to back off a little bit.
Just to have a skull on the passenger seat, just in case.
Yeah, well, it's just this is what badgers do. But then again, you show them, and you'll say, "Look, that's somebody's head. That badgers have dug that up," but they're still not having it. And I totally agree with them. Human beings are the biggest pest species on the planet, without a shadow of a doubt. We are, but we've just got to try and work with what we've got. The Protection of Badgers Act was never written for me to go down to a block of flats and get badgers from underneath it. It was written for the countryside. And I'm trying to adapt that law into the urban environment, which again doesn't work. So sometimes we do sail pretty close to the wind, and sometimes we've got to have things changed by natural England. But we're getting there. We'll get there in the end. So.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, and it would be really interesting to hear from you. 6 months a year, like other side of the badger season again, just to see how things are changing, as you say, especially with the changes with the Section 1s and 2s, and how this whole political landscape is unfurling rapidly, and potentially what will happen, with the next election if the Greens get in or whatever happens there. That'll be an interesting day, won't it?
It will, and I can't see my work getting any less, because obviously, as I was saying before, I think there's just going to get more and more problems with badgers. That's basically what's going to happen. But I mean, I'm getting quite old now, so within the next few years, I'll be stepping back a little bit and letting the younger generation come through and to take up the mantle, as it were.
That's good. Well, I mean, that opens up a whole load of other questions for me, but we have sadly run out of time this evening, and Sean did just prompt us there with the final 3 questions of the evening. So with that, I'll ask the first one. Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast?
Yes, I thought it really good. Yeah, and it gives a chance for me to get my point across, and I think we've covered more than the badges, haven't we? We've covered all sorts. So yeah.
Well, it'd be hopefully, folks will be able to reach out to you with all of their, questions, especially if they've got issues with, having to find ecologists and stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, please, reach out, find Gary. He'll be able to put you in contact with the right people. Apparently, he's got a phone number for everyone. So there we go.
Bless.
Yeah. Second one, give us a shameless plug.
Oh, shameless plug. Right. So Phoenix Wildlife, any pest controllers out there or anybody really, if you're having problems with wildlife, instead of saying no to the customer, just say, I know a man who can, and just give us a shout and we'll do our best to get it sorted, legally and ethically.
Both of those are a big thumbs up there. Legal and ethical. That is 2 thumbs up straight away. Final question then for the evening is, who would you like to see on Beauties and Beasties?
I think you should get some ecologists on and rip them to bits. So, yeah.
Well, have you got a number for one? One that you don't like?
Probably get you one on. Who would I like to see on? Somebody from Natural England.
That would be a good one.
Yeah, explaining legislation. So, because it doesn't just affect the wildlife, it affects when you're dealing with pests as well, doesn't it? So, somebody who actually, maybe as a decision maker from Natural England, just so they can put the lads. So, just give us a little bit, make it a little bit clearer what you're trying to do, what you're trying to get across.
So next time you speak to Rodney, tell him we're looking for him then.
I will do. Yeah, if I can catch him sober.
Well, no. It might help our case if you don't catch him sober. To be fair, get him to agree. That'll be perfect. Right, Gary. Thank you ever so much for your time this evening. It's been really lovely, and it's been like a lovely little sort of like open. I was sure a lot of people listen to this. Lots of little bits and bobs about badgers that they never knew before, which is probably going to really help them moving forwards. So thank you ever so much. There's a lot of love there on the chat for you. So there we go. Sean, over to you to say goodbye.
Yeah. Have a lovely evening. I'm glad everyone's here for the brand new year, and you're going to keep seeing us. For anybody who's watching this who's going to be logging it for CPD, your code is 7425. You'll see it when you log in. Go to the Take Training, CPD training, new. Have a look at that. 7425, folks. God bless. See you all soon.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.